Hi everybody, how's it going? So I have a confession to make, and that is that I don't play many turn-based JRPGs. I know, it's not the most gamer response y'all were looking for. However, I intend to fix that. Recently, I was walking into a thrift store, and I noticed a game that I knew nothing about, that I saw, and I just had to purchase. And that game was Atelier Iris Eternal Mana. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This game is super interesting to me because I saw the cover, I didn't know anything about it, and just look at it. We got ourselves an anime man, a Jeff-looking lady, and a fairy getting her rocks off on a vial. This is a very interesting cover. For reasons. So I thought, well, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It wasn't that much. It was like $5. And I think the only way to find out if the game is good or not is to play it. So let's play it and see if this game is good. Now that's a gamer response. Atelier Iris Eternal Mana is not the first game in its franchise. It turns out this game is part of a very big library of games, all going by similar namings. They've been releasing games for, I want to say, since 2000, and there's a ton of them. One releasing even back in the September of 2025. Now, I'm not going to be comparing this game to any of those games, because I don't think it's fair to do that. I want to judge this game solely on its own merits. The game opens with a flashy cutscene that jumps between a bunch of different characters, each from a different perspective. There's some wild animation right from the start, but more importantly, we're introduced to several characters we know nothing about. It throws us straight into mystery. We don't know who these people are, what's going on, or how it all connects. And on top of that, we also hear two characters talking about the first time they met. We don't know who they are yet at this point, but we're gonna find out very soon. We play as Klain, a young man trying to become a skilled alchemist. Traveling alongside him is his companion Popo, a mana spirit that enables Klain to perform alchemy. See, in this world, an alchemist needs a mana to assist in the actual act of alchemy. Mana are not just forms of magical energy. They are their own race of magical beings. Think of them like fairies, yokai, or any other supernatural being. By participating with one another, an alchemist and a mana can perform masterful amounts of alchemy. Klain encounters a large bird that he cannot beat, but with the help of a mysterious girl named Lita, he's able to end the beast's life. Shout out to my homeboy God for making women real. Am I right, fellas? From here, we arrive to the first town, Kavok, where we get our first mana item, a healing jar. With Popo assisting us, we can craft up to 9 of these things whenever we want, so long as we have the required elements. And see, this is a core mechanic of the game. As we progress through your adventure, you're going to find all sorts of new mana items, elements, and new manas themselves. All of this leads to a really in-depth alchemy system where you collect elements from the surface, or your inventory, or even the enemies to defeat. You enlist the help of a mana, and you create new mana items to help you and your party. It's really ingenious, and it's really well done in the game, and it's never forgotten, or it's never overemphasized more than what it needs. On top of that, manas have their own health and happiness meters, and keeping those maxed out allows for better alchemy, more efficient alchemy, and on top of that, even bonus items. Eventually, you're going to find yourself all in the same position I was, where all of a sudden, I just went on a giant element spree, collecting everything I could. I'll take this, and this. Ooh, a mushroom. Hey lady, your house has elements. I want them. Hello, small child. Surely you're carrying at least a few trace elements. Eventually, we are told about an old abandoned city called Avonberry. That place was once a hub for all alchemists who wished to perfect the art of alchemy. It's currently being blocked off by a giant gate called Himmel's Gate, and it can't currently be opened. It's also here we meet Lita again, who tells us about the Galgazettes, who are professional monster slayers. Lita gets us to join in, and she officially joins the party. And we also get to meet the coolest character in the game, Arlen. He's tough, wields a longsword, wears a collar so you know he's a power bottom, and he's easily this game's stoic swordsman. I need a sword. One thing I really like about this game has to be its art style. It's got this kind of 2000s anime vibe to it, as this game is heavily inspired by a 2000s anime. All the sprite work is so good and well detailed, and I just like that. As well as the battle sprite. They did some excellent work modeling these guys. And another big choice that I actually at first didn't like, but grew to enjoy, was how they made it so that all of the cutscenes happen using the overworld sprites. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I really like it, and it looks really unique, especially compared to other anime-inspired games and stuff like that. Another big thing I really like is gotta be the music. I can't play you the full set out of fear of copyright, but it's great. Every battle theme works, and it keeps the energy up. And a lot of the more mellow tracks also do the same, and I really like them. They're just really expressive. They're great for getting you into the feel of the world.
Shut up, you!
Like most JRPGs, Atelier Iris uses a turn-based combat system. Each character has a set of basic melee attacks and a set of skills that can consume MP. Using Klein as an example, he has his standard attack while also having skills that enhance his alchemy, which is his most important tool. Through alchemy, Klein can create items like fire bombs, ice bombs, and of course some healing items. His skills then enhance those creations. Abilities like Wide Pass increases the range of those items, while something like Power Item boosts the damage of his bombs or increases the effectiveness of his healing items. I think this is pretty well designed, and alchemy is entirely exclusive to Klein, making him a unique and vital party member. That said, the rest of the party is just as important. Every character has their own specialized role that meaningfully contributes to combat. Lita, for example, is the powerhouse. While her basic claw attack isn't anything special, her skills like Mana Burst, Rock Slam, High Jump Kick, and even the KB Blast, which knocks back enemies, makes her very, very effective in combat. One of the coolest aspects of combat is how the entire party can participate seamlessly. Instead of being limited to just attacking, using skills, or defending, you can swap characters mid-battle without losing a turn. This allows for creative strategies. Klein can buff the party, Lita can attack, then you can swap to another character who's better suited for the situation once that buff runs out. In my opinion, it makes combat feels very good, makes battles dynamic, and it ensures the whole party's involved rather than rotating characters outside of combat. Enemies aren't pushovers either. Many have very powerful abilities that can do massive damage to you, or they can summon reinforcements and inflict various status effects like paralysis, poison, and curses. This becomes especially challenging later on in the game, particularly when fighting boss versions of regular enemies. Some enemies can even charge up devastating attacks, but instead of bracing for them and hoping for the best, you can actually interrupt them. Certain skills like Power Shot or Lita's Rock Smash can skill break enemies, causing them to flinch and lose their next turn, leaving them wide open for another attack. The last big thing I want to mention is positioning. Both party and enemies can be placed differently along the battlefield, which affect which attacks and items can be used effectively. Some attacks deal heavy damage in a single zone, while others cover a wide area. Even Klein's wide pass won't work if the target isn't within a certain field of activation. All of this adds an extra layer of strategy, and I found combat to be very intuitive and also very fun to do. I know a common complaint in many JRPGs is that it can feel like all you have to do is spam A to get through combat outside of bosses. But I really like what they did here, as now enemies feel as if there's a lot more going on in their head, and there's a lot more interaction. Getting back to the main story after dealing with the Arlen and all the monsters and tying up a few more loose ends, we eventually get to talk to a new character by the name of Beggar. Yes, his name is Beggar. More like begging for these nuts! Beggar wants Klein to join the Alchemist Knights, which Klein politely refuses. Beggar doesn't take that for an answer though, and begins to chase us throughout the sewers. It's here that we're gonna run into Beggar a lot more. See, Beggar and all of his knights are more or less a group of villains, or antagonists rather, that don't pose too much of a threat. They do have some fun boss fights, and they do occur throughout the story, but they're treated more like a level of comedic villains. Think of them more like Jesse and James from Pokemon, and not Giovanni. Beggar has some more story beats later though, so we'll keep him in mind. But overall, his whole scene is he's salty that Klein doesn't want to join his team. And that's his whole shtick for a long period of the game. After Beggar chases us into the sewer, we meet a new character named Delsis. He guides us through the sewer to escape Beggar, where we then meet the brand new Fire Mana. From here, Delsis joins the party, and he informs us that he may know a few things about Himmel's Gate and Avonbury. However, before we go to Himmel's Gate, Lita wants to stay at home for a bit while Klein and Delsis go take care of a few things. And while she's alone, we learn she has wings.
How long will it last? What am I supposed to do?
Once we wrap up a few things around town, we get to watch a play, and while doing so, a small cat girl robs everybody. But most importantly, she swipes Klein's book that he got from his grandmother about alchemy. This sets in motion the next chapter of the game, getting back Grandma's book. But before we do that, I want to take a detour and talk about the shops. Not to buy stuff, but rather to synthesize some stuff. Not all shops are created equally. Instead of just buying items, many shops allow you to use a system called synthesis. The first time you visit a shop, their inventory is very limited, and most items aren't immediately useful. But synthesis lets you combine objects you find in the world to create new items. Some practical, some surprising, and some with special properties that can give you an edge in combat or trigger some unique scenes. For example, to make medicine, you must combine some mushrooms and some wax powder. But experimenting with different ingredients can produce unexpected items and potions. Even a new thing called Blue Bull, which restores mana instead of health. Each successful synthesis gradually unlocks more items to buy or create. It adds a fun layer of strategy and discovery. You might end up with something completely useless, or something that completely changes how you play. It's a very simple system, but it gives shops a lot more depth, and it's really cool because instead of just buying things, it feels like an actual person's there. Now, the synthesis also helps develop characters just as much as it does help develop the store itself. Different characters have different levels of synthesis needs. Every time you synthesize something at a store, a little invisible meter builds up. As it builds up, you'll get different kinds of character events based on that shop vendor and which part or party members you have and currently enlisted. An example would be Viola at the magic shop. As you synthesize stuff with her, eventually she starts to warm up and become happier. She talks more about her life, and eventually she comes to actually smile whenever you enter her shop. It's actually really funny because Lita starts getting really angry every time Klein and Viola start talking, and she's like, "Don't steal my man," or whatever kind of mentality. Meanwhile, Klein and Viola have a strictly professional relationship. And it's really funny because Lita and Viola very much don't like each other. Beyond just the story benefits, and of course the combat benefits, Synthesis often, I find, reinforces the game's core theme of alchemy. Items you find while exploring, random herbs, powders, and materials, aren't just clutter in your inventory. You can use them to experiment and craft new items, and it's not just one shop. Many shops across the game allow for synthesis, making it a fun system to revisit throughout your journey. The game boasts about having up to 400 possible interactions based on what you do, which is really cool. Heck, I didn't even get close to doing everything, and I try to do as much as possible. After synthesizing some items and traveling to Iris' resting place, we eventually encounter a dark element mana named Plua, which allows us to make some new items as well as improve a few of our old crafting recipes.
Mana of darkness.
However, this one moment also leads us to the next big story beat. While exploring Iris' resting place, we're introduced to a new character, Mole. He demands a power from Lita, a power she says she doesn't know about.
What are you talking
When no
about?
one gives him what he wants, Mole uses powerful magic to freeze the party in place and forcibly rips something called the Ruby Prism out of Lita. Honestly, the first time I saw this, I thought he was going to rip her heart out. This moment firmly establishes Mole as the game's true antagonist. Even though this scene is brief, it tells you everything you need to know. He's cruel, arrogant, and completely uninterested in explaining anything.
Don't worry.
His goals and self-importance are so high, he doesn't bother justifying his actions. He just takes what he wants.
Why did he call you Daughter of Iris?
After getting lost in the forest, yes, I did get lost in the forest, we eventually find the cat girl who stole the book, along with a witchmaster Zeldelia. And after meeting them, Delsus immediately starts calling her pretty and gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Delsus, I'm telling you, don't go for it. Either gonna turn to a frog, you're gonna explode, or you're gonna turn to a frog and explode. Trust me, I've seen it happen before. You've seen it happen before?
Huh?
5 times to be exact. Zeldelia eventually gives the book back after explaining that she knew Klein's grandmother, and making us fight her cat girl familiar, Norn. Norn joins the party after her relatively easy boss fight. Norn is one of those characters that I never thought I would use, but turns out to be a very reliable party member, with her ability to put enemies to sleep, cast magic shield on allies, and most devastatingly, turning enemies into candy. Do you think that the people we turn into candy remain sentient in their new forms? Even as I bite down on their sweet new vessels, they can feel every lash of pain, every moment of agony? Because if so, that is badass. We eventually return to Iris' resting place, where after some puzzle solving, we finally get our next big story beat. At Iris' resting place, we learn about her greatest accomplishment, the creation of mana-empowered artificial people, beings she calls her daughters. And Lita's one of them. But more importantly, though, she's running out of time. See, without the Ruby Prism Mole stole, Lita is going to die much sooner than a normal person.
Now, Mr. Alchemist,
And I
training
mean
gets some.
much sooner. Lita eventually collapses on the ground, and the party goes back to Zeldelia's house to see what she can do.
Oh, those.
Zeldelia tells Klain that if he wants to help her, he needs to get the ruby prism back from Mole. We can only delay the inevitable for so long. And just when things seem a little hopeless, Arlen shows up. He explains that Mole is far too powerful, and he proves it by easily defeating Klain. This makes it clear that Klain isn't ready for a Mole. God damn, is Arlen a badass? Is it just me, or is it getting hot in here? Whew. This leads Klain to a realization. Instead of fighting Mole for the original ruby prism,
What are you talking
he's
about,
gonna have to
Klain?
make one himself. To do that, the party's gonna have to go to Avonberry. But before we talk about that, I think it's very important we talk about something I haven't done. And that's the mana spirits themselves. I haven't talked much about the manas up to this point, because honestly, they haven't been very present in the story, at least not to the extent of the main characters. However, from here on out, mana becomes extremely important, both narratively and mechanically. Manas are used for 5 main things: alchemy, overworld progression, skill progression, crystallization, and Lita's bath. And no, it is not that kind of a bath. Get your mind out of the gutter. I've already talked about alchemy earlier, so I'll skip that one for now. Starting with overworld progression, each mana has a unique ability that helps with traversal, party healing, or manipulating enemy encounter rates. These are fairly straightforward. Destroy obstacles, create step stools, activate hazard barriers, you get the idea. Where manas really shine though is the character progression. Equipping a mana to one person is a very impactful decision, and it can completely alter your leveling. Each party member can equip a mana, and doing so affects how their skills level up. When characters gain experience and level up, the equipped mana also gains experience as well. As the mana levels up, certain skills tied directly to that mana automatically receive skill points. This lets you either hard focus on a single character's powerful abilities, or spread out progression to be more even across a character's kit. It's a clever system that rewards planning without being overly restrictive. And then there's crystallization. Throughout the world, you're going to find mana stones tied to different colors. Using manas at the anvil in your house, you can extract crystals from these stones and socket them into weapons for special effects. You can even fuse up to 3 crystals together to massively amplify their bonuses. Matching the right mana to the right crystal can result in some incredibly powerful weapon upgrades. However, there's one big downside. Not every weapon can be augmented. If you find a weapon you really like, there's a good chance you simply cannot use crystallization on it. This severely limits customization, and as a result, I didn't engage in the system nearly as much as the developers probably intended. And finally, we have Lita's bath. So, as it was explained in the story and how it works mechanically, is that as the game progresses, Lita's going to start losing base levels of MP, or mana points, as well as she's going to become a little bit less useful as she goes on, and this is all indicated by the level of how much her wings have appeared. Now, in order to restore these stats, you have to give Lita a bath in mana-rich water, and that is done by going to a little bath terminal and selecting which manas you want to use to infuse her body with new elements. This will in turn restore her mana point. However, this system is dumb. I'm not going to defend it in any way. It is by far one of the most intrusive and annoying things out there. I totally understand why it's there narratively. It is to raise the stakes and give us a tangible feeling as to what can happen to Lita as she progresses in the world, or just even if you were in the world, she would die. I get that. However, gameplay-wise, it doesn't link into anything. You don't get extra bonuses, or it doesn't change how she plays depending on which element she absorbs. It's just, yeah, you have to do it. It feels more and more like the game wants to slow you down. Lita's a very good party member, I get that. But having me go and backtrack all the way back home to restore her mana points in the middle of a dungeon kind of sucks. I do like how they try to give the manas better usage other than just alchemy. However, I do wish they were better implemented. With our new goal of reaching Avonbury, we first need to get through Himmel's Gate. A hologram of Iris, the one who originally constructed both the gate and Avonbury, appears, and she tells us the only way to enter is to understand the Heart of Mana. Naturally, this turns out to be easier said than done. Eventually, we do learn that the only way to truly understand the Heart of Mana is to cross over into the Land of Mana, where power flows completely uncontested. To even open the path there though, we're gonna need magic mirrors and a few other items, which of course translates to fight monsters and do some quests. Now see, this is the part of the game that I started to question what I was doing and where I was going. See, once we get to learn about the Ruby Prism and what Lita needs to help her revive herself and prevent herself from dying, we're then sent on a bunch of different side quests that don't initially link up with what we actually have to do. So at first you're thinking, oh, okay, well, we're going to focus right on that prism. Nope. We instead have to help Dustus's friend get a super Poonie Ball, and then we have to pick up an order for a blacksmith, and then we have to find a lost child. Look, I understand that character moments are important, but the fact was, this was the moment in the game where we started doing quests that weren't directly tied to whether or not we're gonna actually help Lita or anything.
You gotta be kidding me.
It's kind of a letdown because I thought the main quest became a secondary goal, which is never a good thing in a JRPG. And what's even worse is that after all this, we have another beggar fight. And let me tell you, this one, yeah, it feels kind of tacked on. To be fair, the beggar fight is interesting. His tactics have changed a lot since the last encounter, and he's far more aggressive and pulls off significantly stronger moves. That said though, he's still not that much harder overall. And after all this, then we finally get back on track with the Himmel's Gate. I understand character building moments are important, and so are minor quests. But this was the first time I genuinely felt confused by the pacing. Lita needs a Ruby Prism. Shouldn't that be the main focus? Instead, it starts to feel like a secondary objective, and I kept wondering how all these unrelated errands were supposed to connect back to the core goal. However, eventually, after everything with all the side quests and character jumps, we do eventually get back to the Prism quest line. So we finally learned that Himmel's Gate needs 2 mirrors to function.
Deep gorge in the
Well, or I should say, open. It needs the Mirror of Dawn and the Mirror of Twilight.
It looks like a solid
and thanks to our buddy Arlen, we actually learned that there's a place called the Cleft of Nelvia that actually is always in Twilight. At sunset, it becomes super red and looks like it's in Twilight. So that's our first big area we gotta go.
Hey dudes,
Fuck yeah, Arlen.
It looks like a solid red wall.
You think that's Twilight?
Well,
you solved that puzzle so good, Arlen.
100-man army.
Fuck.
Yeah.
This section delivers on spectacle. We fight through a fortress packed with bandits, thieves, and gunners, ending in a super fun boss fight. Then we scale down the massive Cleft of Nelvia itself, along the way meeting a new mana spirit named Silwist. There's also a really funny comedic cutscene here.
It's just a story.
We have to throw Dustus's wallet into a magic spring because it's valuable, and if you throw something valuable in the spring, a supposed majestic spirit comes and helps you. We do that, and instead of the spirit being wise and mysterious,
in there.
she's a complete
Always
asshole.
dropping junk in here. How come I'm the one who always has to fish it out? Well, if you promise not to dump any more crap in here, I'll return your belongings.
Honestly, if I was ever a
Was it this
guardian
jewel?
spirit,
Or did
this
you
would be
use a
me.
stone?
Instead of returning the wallet, she gives us one of the mirrors needed for Himmel's Gate. From here, the game leans even harder into hunting ancient artifacts and digging up information about the Land of Mana. Eventually though, this leads us into an icy cave, where we encounter one of the toughest bosses so far, the Elder Villain. The Elder Villain is easily one of the hardest bosses in the
I
mid-game.
thought all that dragon stuff was just.
I actually died to him
Prepare
a
yourself.
lot.
It's coming
He has
this
this
way.
bite attack which drains you to almost half your health, and he can wipe your entire team if you are not paying attention. And I learned something about this boss fight. It turns out I was underleveled. And I don't mean by a little bit either. Despite every other enemy in this area being very easy, and the fact that I was doing really good against them, I thought I was overleveled. However, the Elder Villain is just built different. He has way higher stats than any other enemy around us, and he's way tougher than any other boss. I actually had to resort to grinding a little bit in order to make myself even stand a chance. However, I will say he's a very fun fight. If it wasn't for Norn's magic shield, I don't know what I would have done. But I will admit it 100%. All thanks to Arlen and his badassery, he was able to jump up, slash the dragon, and kill it. I'm telling you, man, he's awesome.
Ridiculous.
I don't have normal feelings about him, I assure you. What makes bosses so fun is the good amount of balance. They're never too difficult, nor are they too easy. I talked about the Elder Villain, so I don't think I need to address him any further. But fights like Norn's battle are really exhilarating. The enemy placement is really good, as well as having Norn accompanied by some healing units is a nice touch in increasing the fight's difficulty without making it too unfair. And then having her join the party later is also really cool. I also like fights against Beggar. Sure, he isn't super threatening, but he is still really fun. Every time you meet him, his strategy changes a little bit. He has more
This
goons
won't be
with him,
pretty.
all of his goons have skills and are just as dangerous as him, and on top of that, many of his goons actually have names and personalities, making it feel as if Beggar has his own adventuring party. The boss at the fortress is also really tough and fun. You have to go through waves and bandits and thieves before you can get to him. And when you finally do, he has his own bodyguards and gunmen. It's easily one of the more hectic fights in the game, and it's really fun. And the last boss fight I want to talk about is the Prism boss. He is this half horse, half dog crystal thing that's very much a challenge. He has this ram attack that drained my party of most of their health and items, and he also has the ability to knock people back and mess up my formations. It's a really good fight, and it really keeps you on your toes because it feels like you're fighting an actual beast. Also, the Prism Beast looks like a Pokemon, and I think that's cool. After getting the Mirror of Twilight, Delsus tells us of a town called Durin. Here, they have a legend of a place called the Land of Mana. However, Delsus is a little bit sus, and he doesn't want to go. But when we
Who the hell are
get
you?
there,
I've
we
never seen
learn
you before.
why.
Go away.
And not only is he from this town,
Yeah.
we also learn important information.
Don't.
His name
call me
isn't
that.
just Delsus. It's Sir Gillion Delsus Ashley
Big
Delvaroux.
brother?
And he has a hot sister.
Huh? What? You must have.
And,
me confused with
he
someone else.
is the son of
I'm
the
an only
chief.
child.
But more importantly, his sister is hot. Delsus's father will only help him if he can pass the test of Parodius, a test Delsus has been avoiding all his life. which is just a giant puzzle with giant chess pieces. The puzzle itself is very easy. Just push the purple pieces into the glowing spot. There isn't even a correct order to put them in, nor is there a time limit. So why was Delsus running from this test? Anyway, after we learn of a forest that can transport you to the land of mana, we head there. The forest itself is actually really cool visually. I like walking among the trees here, and it makes me feel like I'm in a giant treehouse. Once we're finally in the land of mana, we actually do get achievements in there. And it's here we learn, more importantly, what we need to do next, and also get a little story power. We're not the first humans to ever be. It turns out the legendary alchemist Iris was here long before us, and she earned the chieftain's trust. And more importantly, she learned all about alchemy, mana, and stuff like that. Plain wants to follow in her footsteps, and in order to do that, he's gonna have to earn their trust too. Because apparently, the chieftains, who are supposed to be really good people, don't trust anybody and don't do anything for free, even though it's very clear we're trying to help our friend out. However, they do say there is a way we can earn their trust. To do that, Clay needs to obtain a primal gem from a massive temple called the Flawless Marvel. This ends up being the final trial he has to clear before he can pass through Himmel's Gate, and we can finally reach Avonberry to create a ruby prism. There isn't much that happens between this meeting and actually heading to the Flawless Marvel. But honestly, I'm fine with that, because this dungeon rules. At least from a design standpoint. It's built almost entirely out of bright white stone with subtle blue accents, and the lighting and shading make it really stand out. Compare this to every other dungeon we've gone through so far, and it looks completely different and instantly memorable. The boss here is the Primal Beast, and since I've already talked about him, I won't repeat myself. But once we finally claim this gem, we're given access through Himmel's Gate at last. And that finally means we can make our way to Avonberry.
Klein, wait.
You know, if it wasn't for the characters in this game, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed the game nearly as much. And that's not me saying that the gameplay is bad. I think the gameplay is just fine. But I do think that the characters are the sole reason I had so much enjoyment playing the game. Atelier Iris does have a decent story, but the little interactions between everybody are what really kept me going, and honestly, I think that's what makes the game so much fun. See, the plot can feel a little all over the place every now and then, and it can feel a little disjointed. But all the little character interactions are just so much fun to be around, and they're so much fun to watch them go back and forth. We've already talked about how Arlen is easily the coolest character. But the rest of the party has some great dynamics too. Take Lita, for example. She's hot-headed, aggressive, and way more forward than Klain. And honestly, they make a really strong main character duo. Klain is calm and reserved, sometimes a little too much so. He'll go from completely unmotivated to suddenly fired up with almost no build-up. If Lita wasn't there to bounce off him, Klain would absolutely feel like a plank of wood. She adds energy, friction, and personality that the two really need. And then there's Delsus, who I didn't expect to like at all, but he's actually great. He's got this whole cool tough guy image in his head, except nobody else in the game buys into it. Despite this, he has some great moments where he's almost like a big brother to Klain, and I think that's really good because Klain really does need somebody who's a bit older than him to show him around. Also, Delsus keeps trying to play the smooth playboy type, and it never works on any of the female characters, which somehow just makes it funnier every time.
Sisters are hot.
And finally, we have got to talk about Norn. she's fine. I don't hate her dialogue, even if the constant cat noises every 5 seconds do get a bit old. But since she's clearly meant to be the game's resident cat girl mascot thing, I'll allow it. What really sells her though is the voice acting. She comes across as young, naive, and relentlessly positive, which makes her a great contrast to the rest of the cast, who are generally calmer or on occasion kind of a bit on the darker, more serious side. And before you say anything, she's 12. When you put all these personalities together, the group just works. I can genuinely see this being a cast of an anime, which honestly makes sense because that feels like this game's biggest influence. Atelier Iris really does feel like a playable anime, especially in the way the characters bounce off each other. And while the game is fun on its own, that chemistry is what really makes it memorable. And it's probably the biggest reason it succeeds at all. You get the Primal Gym. Finally, after so long, we can finally go through Himmel's Gate and head towards Avonberry. And the actual quest they get to Avonberry just has to scale some mountains and some smaller dungeons. Nothing too crazy happens here, but it is some nice change of scenery. The main thing though is Avonberry itself. It's this gigantic city and it has a giant library-based dungeon inside of it.
What's this?
This dungeon is super jam-packed with various ghosts and mana-based enemies, and fighting them is really fun. Since they're immune to your physical attacks, you're going to have to branch off and use different character abilities. And on top of that, shifting between different party members is a must in order to get through this fight. Yet, there is one big shining reveal, and that is we finally get to learn how to make a ruby prism. So we're going to need Gurgu's cane and a reptile egg in order to make it. Now, there are a few more story beats that happen here, but the main takeaway is that we finally have our final list of what we need to wrap up most of this. Just 2 simple items. And from here, the game starts to pick up pace a lot. We also finally learn what the Ruby Prism actually does here. It generates an amount of mana so great and vast that it's practically an infinite supply. And that matters a lot because it's exactly what Lita needs to survive, since her body literally runs on mana. But according to Iris, there is something else the Ruby Prism can do. And that is, it can create an artificial mana. This mana is a beast called Amalgam, and it only consumes and kills. This beast can't be controlled, and that's what led to the fall of Avonberry and the current state of alchemy. Of course, we're not allowed to just take the book and leave. There's a boss standing in our way, a massive ghost demon monster that eats books. And not just any books. Their favorites are the ones filled with powerful mana rituals and symbols. So yeah, this thing is very much not happy about us walking off with Iris's research. The fight itself is one of the better battles in the game. I wouldn't put it above the Prism Beast, but it's still a fun encounter, and I'd say it comfortably lands in one of the better boss fights of the game. So, after the legendary adventure in Avonberry, our heroes decide to...
What kind of business?
Arlen!
This is my
Yo,
problem.
Arlen, what are you talking about?
Death fast
Arlen?
approaches. I can feel it.
Arlen? Arlen!
Marlin!
He made his choice.
Damn it!
There's nothing we can do.
So, yes, if you don't know, Arlen left the party.
Finish
He
with
was the
story.
coolest person, and he left. Damn it. Anyway, after this, we then have to deal with another beggar fight. And I'm sorry, guys. It's just with Arlen leaving, there's no point of
Show you how it's done.
that. Oh my god. Oh my, whoa, who is she? Whoa. Oh my, she has a chainsaw! Yeah, oh, she can use lightning? Can she get healed? Hot damn! Marietta! Wow! Shout out to God for making women! So after recruiting
exactly
the
is Mel
absolute
trying to
peak
do?
of characters,
Have you ever heard
Marietta,
of ultimate
the gang
mana
heads to
fusion?
Zeldelia's house to get a little more information on Mole,
Wasn't that...
and where to get the items for the Ruby Prism.
Yeah, that's the reason
She
I haven't
explains
read
that
collapsed.
Mole and her were
Correct.
students of alchemy a
Using
very
enough
long
strong
time ago,
mana will
and Mole
revive the
became
amalgam.
obsessed
If that
with
beast comes
amalgam
back to life,
for
mana
many
all
reasons
over the world
unknown.
will be destroyed.
Zeldelia gives the
And any
locations where we can
artificial
find the
humanoid
required
without
items
a
for a Ruby Prism,
will die.
and we're off. From here, the game starts to wrap up very quickly. We climb up a large tower and have to fight 4 elemental guardians in this boss rush. These are some pretty cool fights, as each of the bosses are a different element and attack in different ways. Once we get the Gurgu cane, we only have one more item to collect, that being an egg. But we have one more fight before that against this giant machine. It's actually really cool, as the machine attacks with very similar attack patterns as the 4 different elemental bosses, and it hits very hard. I struggled a lot with this machine. However, it wasn't because I was underleveled, I just wasn't paying the most attention. You can only fight so many bosses before you become emotionally drained. But that being said, it was still a very intense boss fight. But we eventually decided to go back to Kavok to regroup and rethink, when we get a letter from Beggar. He wants one more showdown.
Alone after the...
And so this is the final showdown with Beggar.
Back in the gym!
This fight takes place in the 2 main phases. You of course have to deal with his goon in the first phase, which is a lot tougher than his second phase. In his first phase, a lot of his goons use more of their tactics and they're more of a support role for each other, and as a result, the fight can go on for quite a bit of time. However, his second phase is a little bit different than his first phase. Mainly because he actually shows the fuck up, but he isn't too difficult. In fact, I'd say that this is easily
You're in trouble now.
easiest of the 2 phases. See, in this phase, he doesn't have as many supporting allies, and as a result, he's left to his own devices. He isn't that much of a pushover. I mean, yeah, he does do some damage, but as long as you keep your health up, he's a totally great. But after this, that we finally talked to Beggar, and thanks to Marietta, we're able to talk some sense into this guy. It turns out
Snap
Beggar
out of it,
wasn't
moron.
always like this. He used to stand for things like honor and justice, and he was actually
Don't you
really
get it?
well respected
Alcavana doesn't
and
need
seen as
power,
a
and neither
good
do I.
hero in the area.
We need my older brother.
But over
a man who
time,
cared about
greed,
others.
laziness, and an overall lack of care kind of took over.
True?
After Marietta snaps him to his senses, he admits he's done fighting Klain and he wants to leave the past behind him. He apologizes, and him and his knights decide to start over, and they do their best to become the kind of knights that they used to be. This next section moves even faster. We start by going around town helping out a few people, and eventually we return to Akros, where we hear about something called the Salamander Curse. Apparently, there's a fire-powered salamander that turns people into stone if they get too close.
Actually sounds kind of fun.
And if you're guessing where we're going to find our next ingredient for the Ruby Prism, you're right. The fight itself looks scary at first, but it's actually pretty manageable. Since most of
It's
the
just a
enemies are grouped
salamander.
together, you can use your meteor alchemy to one-shot the smaller ones. The bigger Basilisk acts more like a mini-boss. Keep your health up, and he's not too threatening. His attacks don't hit hard, and once the enemies start spreading out a bit,
Never fear.
it's really easy to beat him. Once we do get the salamander egg, we can finally create the Ruby Prism. With that done, we travel back to the land of Mana, where the Mana Chiefs instruct us to travel to the place of life's birth, Silencia.
Much to be done.
but they also warn us of a massive disturbance. Mole has apparently revived Amalgam, and if we don't stop it, both the Land of Mana and the rest of the world are in serious trouble. But first things first, we've got to make a ruby prism. Silencia is an interesting dungeon. It's a giant floating stone pathway with lots of stairs and teleporters. At first, I was kind of annoyed by the teleporters, but I very quickly noticed a pattern. They go northwest, east, south, all the general cardinal directions. And as long as you're paying attention, you can figure out where they lead. It's a giant grid, and you can easily see the other islands on the edges. As long as you pay attention, it's actually pretty easy. And finally, we reach the Grand Hall! And it's thanks to all this hard work we put in, we can make a ruby prism just for Lita! It's sparkling, it's beautiful, and we get a touching moment when she embraces Klein and really gives him a thanks he deserves. And I too rejoice in this moment.
Take it, Lita.
Because I never have to deal with the bath mechanic again! Hallelujah! Praise the Lord! From here, we travel to Iris's resting place, where we see Arlen desperately trying to fight Mole. But unfortunately, Mole is able to defeat Arlen. Arlen's body begins to turn to stone as he can no longer maintain human form. He asks us to take down Mole for him. We say yes, and we head to the teleporter, and we begin to explore Mole's castle. It's dark, gloomy, and very short. Not that it's a bad final dungeon, it's just over very quickly. I'd say the actual exploration only takes about 10 to 15 minutes at most. The real challenge here comes from the enemies. Very high-level versions of previous bosses and heavily buffed enemies. They're not too difficult if you fight smart, but most of your time here is spent battling rather than solving puzzles or opening doors or exploring. Once we finally clear the last locks on the main door, we come face to face with Mole himself. And after all this time, we finally get to learn what Mole has been after all this time.
Do you have any idea what you're doing?
Well, it turns out that Mole believes the natural state of the world is run by humans. Mana and all forms of magic should be slaves to humankind. And more importantly, he does want to rule the world and reshape it in his own image. However,
Then how can you do
as
that?
Mole summons Amalgam, he turns a blind eye, only for Amalgam to one-shot him and absorb his soul. Amalgam is a tough boss. He's capable of 3 attacks. One removes all of your party buffs, and it damages you the more buffs you have. Next is the targeted slam attack that will take a large portion of health. And most devastatingly is his elemental extraction. It is nearly a one-shot move. I can't tell you just how hard hitting this attack is. I would be doing so good, and then all of a sudden, bam, I got wiped out. The best strategy here is to keep Klein as a healer of sorts, occasionally using lightning to damage Amalgam, and then have everybody else attack. And even then, with this strategy, I'd still recommend grinding a bit for some levels. It really is one of the harder fights, and seeing as how it is the final boss, it does make sense. But he is super tough. So definitely be prepared for a long, long battle. However, once Amalgam falls, we watch Klein and Lita destroy the summoning circle and finally put an end to this mess.
Take this!
Wrap our story up, recapping what everybody's gonna do after this big grand adventure. Beggar and his knights continue to reshape themselves and try to re-earn the honor they once had. Norn and Zeldalia actually continue working on their studies, and of course, Norn does mess up just a little bit. Delsus and Marietta have the most interesting actual. Delsus tells Marietta wouldn't mind sticking around just for her. And while she doesn't answer him,
I wouldn't mind sticking around for
I'm
you.
pretty sure they're meant to be together. And our very last scene that we see is Klain and Lita going off in the sunset to have more adventures
Let's
together.
go.
And that, my friends, the Atelier Iris Eternal Mana. So, after everything, how do I feel about the game? Well, first things first, I do think this game is a little bit of a mixed bag if you're iffy on JRPG. I personally found it to be an amazing game, and it really did get me into turn-based combat. I love the fact that all throughout the game, there's multiple choices for everything. You don't have to just use one character, you can use any kind you want. And on top of that, combat's more than just a button masher. It's not just hit A till you win, there's actual strategy involved. And that's really, really cool. On top of that, I also really like the fact that alchemy is a core theme of the game. It's not just thrown in there for the funsies, there's actual alchemy throughout the entire game. And with that, the manas are really cool. I like the fact that each one has their own little personality, and I like the fact that each one has multiple uses. And on top of that, if we're going to talk about characters, the main characters, our main guys, are phenomenal. I really do think they're fun and I think they're creative. I like how they bounce off of each other really well. However, I can understand why somebody would look at this game and be like, do I want it? I get that. To be fair, the manas are not perfect, as a lot of the systems they're involved in are kind of not well implemented. Things like Lita's Bath and crystallization don't really play that well. Meanwhile, there are other systems like the actual traversal of the world, and of course their stat progression are great. However, I can understand why somebody would be a little iffy on that, because if the manas, the main sense of the game, are only halfway done, it can be a little hard to get into. On top of that, the art style is not for everybody. I fully understand that not everybody does like anime, and a lot of people don't like anime-based games. And while this one isn't super anime, I could see how a lot of these characters first, if I will put it like that way, could be seen as just that, caricatures of anime-style characters. And I can also see how, since this game is turn-based, it doesn't matter how good the turn-based combat is, some people just won't like it. However, if you're looking to give a game a try, I really do think you should look at this game or any of the other games in the series. While I haven't played many of them, this is the only one, I will definitely say it is really good, and it really got me into JRPGs. However, it is a little bit on the easier side. Outside of a few bosses, you won't need to grind them up. So if you're a hardcore JRPG person, you may not like it, and you may say, I'll pass. But with that said, I still like the game, and I give it my seal of approval. If you like this video, please subscribe. Please subscribe. I put in all this stuff, and I became a final boss just for you. So, with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye!